Hi 5th graders, welcome to lesson 7.9, Multiply Mixed Numbers. The essential question for this lesson is, how do you multiply mixed numbers? Now go ahead and open up in your Go Math workbooks to lesson 7.9, found on page 161, and let's get started. Now let's take a look at question number 2. The directions say to find the product and to write the product in its simplest form. Well, for question 2 they give us 1 1/7 times 1 3/4. Now, in order to multiply these two mixed numbers together correctly, my first step has to be this. I have to rewrite my mixed numbers as improper fractions. So I'm going to start with 1 1/7. My first step is going to be this. I have to multiply my denominator, which is 7, times the whole number, which is 1. So once again, that would be 7 times 1. Now my next step is I have to add the numerator. So I'm going to be adding in that numerator, which is a 1. So once again, 7 times 1 is going to give us 7, and then 7 plus 1 more is going to give us 8. So my numerator becomes an 8, so we're going to go ahead and write 8 down as our numerator, and remember, your denominator stays the same. So we're going to leave our denominator as a 7. Now I'm going to do the same thing with 1 3/4. I'm going to start out by multiplying my denominator times the whole number. So that means I'm going to multiply 4 times the 1, and then to that I'm going to have to add the 3, which is my numerator. So I'm going to be adding in the 3. So that means 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plus 3 is going to give me 7. So my numerator is going to be a 7, and once again my denominator stays the same, so my denominator here is going to be a 4. So what I have now is this. I have the improper fraction 8/7 times the improper fraction 7/4. Now, when you find the product of two improper fractions, the numbers can turn out to be pretty large. So we're going to go back to something that we talked about in class, and that was thinking about how we could simplify within the problem before we multiply across. So what I'm going to do first is this. I'm going to focus on my 7 and my 7. Now remember, when you simplify in the problem, you're looking at the numbers that are diagonal to each other. And what I know is, when I have the same number here and here, I can divide both those 7s by 7, and they're both going to turn now into 1s. So I'm going to replace those two 7s, and I'm going to turn those into 1, because 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 7 divided by 7 is 1. Now I'm going to focus on the 8 and the 4. Well, what I know is I can divide both an 8 and a 4 by 4. And when I do that, 4 divided by 4 is going to give me 1, and 8 divided by 4 is going to give me 2. Now I've simplified within the problem, and my numbers are much smaller and much easier to work with. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply my fractions, which means I'm going to multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator, so straight across. So I know that 2 times 1 is going to give me 2, and 1 times 1 is going to give me 1, and when I end up with 2 over 1, that means that my answer turns out to be the whole number 2. So what that tells me is the product of 1 1/7 times 1 3/4 turns out to be the whole number 2. Now let's take a look at question number 4. Once again, our job is to find the product and to write that product in its simplest form. Well, for question 4, they give me 2 5/8 times 1 2/3. Well, once again, in order to multiply these two mixed numbers together correctly to find the product, my first step has to be to rewrite the mixed numbers as improper fractions. So once again, I'm going to multiply my 8, my denominator, times the whole number. So it's going to be 8 times 2, and I know that 8 times 2 is going to give me 16, and then 2 that I have to add my numerator, which is a 5. So that becomes 8 times 2, which is 16, plus my 5, and that's going to take me to 21. So my numerator is going to be a 21, and remember, your denominator stays the same. So it becomes 21/8. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with 1 2/3. I'm going to multiply the denominator times my whole number, so I'm going to multiply 3 times 1, and I know that 3 times 1 is going to give me 3, and then I also have to add my numerator. So I'm going to add the 2 to that as well. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 more is going to give me 5, so my numerator is a 5, and once again, my denominator stays the same. So I'm going to turn that into 5 thirds. So we'll go ahead and write our 3 down as our denominator. Now my improper fractions are now 21/8 times 5/3. Now once again, because we're multiplying two mixed numbers together, the numbers or the product can turn out to be quite large. So let's think about how we might be able to simplify within the problem. So I'm going to look at the numbers that are diagonal to each other, 21 and 3 and 5 and 8. Now what I know is this. When I look at a 3 and a 21, I know that I can divide both those numbers by 3. They both share a factor of 3, so I'm going to cancel those two numbers out. And I know that 21 divided by 3 is going to give me 7, and I know that 3 divided by 3 is going to give me 1, so I'm going to turn that 3 into a 1. Now I'm going to focus on my 8 and my 5. Well, 8 and 5 do not share any common factors, so I can't simplify those two numbers. So now I'm going to go ahead and begin to multiply straight across. So I'm going to start by multiplying the numerators, and I know that 7 times 5 is going to give me 35. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply my denominators, and I know that 8 times 1 is going to give me 8. So I'm left with the improper fraction 35/8. Now what I know is 8 goes into 35 4 whole times. So I'm going to turn this into the whole number 4, and what I know is 4 times 8 is 32. So I'm left with the remainder of 3, so that 3 becomes my numerator. Now remember, your denominator stays the same. So I'm going to go ahead and make 8 my denominator, and I now have a product of 4 and 3/8. So what I know is the mixed numbers 2 and 5/8 times 1 and 2/3 is going to give me a product of 4 and 3/8. Now let's take a look at question number 6. Once again, our job is to find the product, and we're going to write the product in simplest form. Well, for question 6, they give us the mixed numbers 7 and 1/5 times 2 and 1/6. Now once again, in order to multiply these mixed numbers correctly, we have to first turn those mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to begin by multiplying my 5 times my 7, denominator times the whole number, and I know that 7 times 5 is going to give me 35. Then to that I have to add my numerator, which is a 1. Well, 7 times 5 is 35, and 35 plus 1 is going to give me 36. So my numerator is going to be 36, and remember, once again, our denominator stays the same. So our denominator is going to be a 5. So we'll go ahead and write the 5 in. So 7 and 1/5 has now become the improper fraction 36/5. Now we'll do the same to 2 and 1/6. I'm going to first of all multiply the denominator times the whole number. So 6 times 2. And I know that 6 times 2 is going to give me 12. Now to that I have to add the numerator, which is a 1. So we're going to go ahead and add 1 to that. So 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is going to give me 13. And remember, once again, our denominator stays the same. So our denominator is still going to be a 6. Now once again, let's see if we can simplify within the problem so that we can make our numbers a little bit smaller and much more easy to work with. I'm going to look first of all at my 36 and my 6. And what I know is 36 and 6 both share a common factor. I can divide both of those numbers by 6. Well, I know that 36 divided by 6 is going to give me 6. And I know that 6 divided by 6 is going to give me 1. Now I'm going to look at my 5 and my 13. Well, what I know is 5 and 13 do not share any common factors, so I can't simplify those two numbers. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply straight across. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply numerator times numerator. And what I know is when I multiply 6 times 13, that's going to take me to 78. So my numerator is going to be a 78. And now I'm going to multiply my denominators together. So 5 times 1 is going to give me 5. So I now have the improper fraction 78/5. Now in order to simplify that improper fraction, let's just do a little simple division problem. I'm going to take my 78 and I'm going to divide it by 5 because once again, this line right here can also represent division. Now what I know is this. I know that 5 goes into 7 one whole time. So I'm going to put a 1 above the 7. And I know that 1 times 5 is going to give me 5. Now we're going to go ahead and subtract, and we're left with 2. Now our next step is to go ahead and drop down or bring down the 8. Now 5 goes into 28 5 times. So I'm going to put a 5 above the 8, And I know that 5 times 5 is going to give me 25. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my 25 and subtract, and now I'm left with a remainder of 3. Now what this tells me is, from this division problem, I know that 15 becomes my whole number. So I'm going to go ahead and make the whole number 15. I know that the remainder, what I'm left with here, my 3, becomes my numerator. So we're going to turn that 3 into our numerator. So here's our 3. And I know once again that my denominator stays the same. And this 5 out here also shows my denominator. So we're going to make our denominator a 5. So we end up with the product 15 and 3/5. So what I know is 7 1/5 times 2 1/6 gives me a product of 15 and 3/5. Now let's take a look at question number 10. The directions for number 10 are a little different. This time they say use the distributive property to find the product. Now remember, using the distributive property means we're going to break apart this mixed number, the 2 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead, and my first step is going to be this. We're going to rewrite our expression, 26 times 2 1/2. We're going to rewrite that expression using the distributive property. So what happens is, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write down my 26, and I'm going to break apart now my 2 1/2. Now when I break apart 2 1/2, it becomes the whole number 2 plus the fraction part 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rewrite that. So 26 times, and I'm going to put a set of parentheses here, 2 plus the fraction 1/2. Because once again, 2 plus 1/2 equals our 2 1/2. Now remember, when I use the distributive property, it means that I have to distribute that 26 to the 2, and I also distribute the 26 to the 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those arrows as reminders. So we're going to multiply 26 times 2, and we're also going to multiply the 26 times the 1/2. So I'm now going to multiply our 26 by each of those numbers. So now we have, in parentheses, 26 times the 2 plus our 26 times the 1/2. We've distributed that 26, or multiplied that 26, by both of our numbers, by both the 2 and the 1/2. Well, what I know is this. When I multiply 26 times 2, when I find the product, 26 times 2 is going to take us to an answer of 52. And if you're not sure about that, you can always come out to the side. 26 times 2, I know that 2 times 6 is 12. Regroup the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So once again, 26 times 2 is going to give us 52. Now our next step is we have to now add that to our second product, which is 26 times 1/2. Now if I'm going to multiply 26 times 1/2, let's come out to the side and take care of that. We're going to make 26 into 26 over 1. We're going to turn it into a fraction, and we're going to multiply that by 1/2. So when I multiply across, 26 times 1 is going to give me 26, and I know that 1 times 2 is going to give me a 2. Now, when I simplify this, I know that when I divide 26 by 2, I know that 2 goes into 26 13 whole times. So I'm going to go ahead and write the product down as 13. Now our last step is this. We now have to add those two products together. So we're going to add 52 plus 13. And when we add 52 plus 13, that's going to take us to an answer of 65. And we have now found our product using the distributive property. We distributed the 26 to both the 2 and also the 1/2 in order to find our product of 65. Now let's take a look at question number 13. It's one of our real-world problem-solving questions, and number 13 says, a glass can hold 3 1/3 cups of water. A bowl can hold 2 3/5 times the amount in the glass. How many cups can a bowl hold? So what we know is this. We know that a glass can hold 3 1/3 cups of water. So we're going to start out with our 3 1/3 cups. And we know that a bowl can hold 2 3/5 times the amount in the glass. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to multiply that 3 1/3 times our 2 3/5. So the question is, how many cups can a bowl hold? Now remember, we're multiplying two mixed numbers, 3 1/3 times 2 3/5. So our first step has to be this. We have to turn those mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to have you go ahead and pause your video, and I want you to rewrite 3 1/3 and also 2 3/5 as improper fractions, and we'll check together. So pause your video now and we'll check in just a minute. Now, hopefully your improper fractions look like mine. We multiplied 3 times 3, denominator times the whole number, and 3 times 3 is 9, plus the numerator, which is 1, which would take us to 10. So 3 1/3 has now become 10/3. Then we took our 5 and multiplied it by the whole number 2. So 5 times 2 is going to give us 10, plus our numerator, which is 3. So 10 plus 3 takes us to 13. And remember, once again, your denominator stays the same. So 2 3/5 has now become 13/5. Now, once again, I'm going to look to see in my problem, can I simplify before I multiply across? So I'm going to begin by looking at my 10 and my 5. And I know that a 10 and a 5 both share a common factor. They both share the common factor of 5. Well, I know that 10 divided by 5 is going to give me 2, so I'm going to rewrite my 10 as a 2. And 5 divided by 5 is going to give me 1, so my 5 becomes a 1. Now I'm going to look at my 13 and my 3. And what I know is 3 and 13 do not share a common factor, so I can't simplify with my 3 and my 13. So my next step is to begin to multiply straight across. So I'm going to multiply my numerators together, and I know that 2 times 13 is going to give me 26. Now I'm going to multiply my denominators together, and I know that 3 times 1 is going to give me 3. So I now have the improper fraction 26/3. What I know is 3 goes into 26 8 whole times, so I'm going to go ahead and write the whole number 8. And I know that 8 times 3 is going to give me 24, so I'm left with a remainder of 2. So my numerator becomes a 2, and remember, our denominator stays the same. So I'm going to go ahead and write 3 as my denominator. So my answer turns out to be 8 2/3 cups. So what I know is that the bowl can hold 8 2/3 cups of water, and we now have our product. Now your homework for tonight will be to complete question number 1 and question number 2, as well as numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 162. Don't forget, somewhere on your homework page I want you to assess yourself. Do you feel like you're number 1 a novice, number 2 an apprentice, number 3 a practitioner, or number 4 an expert? Don't forget, your homework assignment for tonight will be to complete question number 1 and question number 2, as well as numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 162. We hope you have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you in class tomorrow.